pieces that we thought were great that underperformed for a variety of reasons in terms of they just didn't kind of cut it, they didn't kind of make the grade. How can you manage risk when you come to your own content marketing strategies and make the most value out of your efforts? I mean, we've all made mistakes, and let's kind of fess up and share some of those mistakes with the audience so that hopefully you guys can learn.
Okay, I fucked up on one. Let's get real. I just think if you go back to the 2% of people that have a strategy, and 98% of you don't, that's okay. I'd be interested to know what you're actually measuring in your strategy. So I think for me it's, have you got a strategy, have you actually measured, and therefore can you deem whether it's actually been a failure or success? I have done some work on a beauty, called a beauty products, and we extended it into, I guess, a whole value-added suite of stories around women and their beauty regime. This is a bloke talking about beauty regime. Love it. So the girls in the audience. But it's about creating a beauty regime and what role or what look you had and what level of experience you had with beauty products. So if that makes a bit of sense, we thought we had the best strategy and we had lots of interesting content. We invited women to salons and filmed them, videoed them, etc. And we systematically tested about 30 pieces of content. Videoed them, put them through social networks, got advocates and promoters to go out there and talk about it. We had some spectacular failures on content that we thought was fantastic. And this is from experts, hair experts who'd come from the UK, etc. I won't go into specifics, but the learning was we thought it was great. We didn't necessarily know what our audience wanted. We didn't actually ask what they wanted. And we sort of probably pushed a bit too much at them and hoped, that classic thing of hope it goes viral, I hope people go and share it. I'd love 1 million shares on Facebook. It doesn't quite happen. So I think the big learning from the couple of the failures was ask your consumers or your audience or your target groups what they're wanting, and that's the interaction metric. I mean, Oreo was interesting, but did they ever ask consumers if those were the best informative pieces for the day? Probably not.
But they know their audience, right? So
they probably knew the audience, yeah.
They're trying to play a relevant role in the audience's, they're giving some value, whether it's entertaining or informative. It depends on their audience.
I think they said they'd scraped Facebook for the keywords and the key conversations, so they understood.
But Anton, were you able to change or evolve your concepts with,
we did,
with that kind of real-time feedback?
Yeah, so we learned we ran a series of events over about 6 months. So we learned from the spectacular failures in some of the first events, then having customer feedback, and then tailoring some of the next events to what the women were saying. We then broke it into 3 basic clusters: very advanced beauty regime, sort of mid-level awareness and knowledge, and very basic. So we ran basic content to people that had a basic understanding, mid-level content to a mid-level of understanding, and more advanced masterclass type stuff, which sort of sounds obvious, doesn't it? But you've got to test things and fail, I think, to understand.
I think that's one of the advantages of content marketing, actually. It's iterative, isn't it? You can learn on the go. You can put stuff out that doesn't work, tweak it, change it, and that's one of the kind of major plus points, I think, of it as a channel. Skye, any failures?
I'd just say I actually wouldn't call them failures because I think it's just learning experiences.
Sure. Good point.
We've definitely had content that's worked better than other pieces, but that helps us drive a strategy and decide on what our customers actually want. So I think it can only really help you. We look at our analytics on a regular basis. We see what our email campaigns, see the most popular articles, and I think the key, and Anton was basically saying, ask people. You've got, I'm sure everyone in this room has internal databases that they can leverage, or Facebook communities, or any other social sort of networks that you can get in touch with. Ask them what they want to hear.
Yeah. Okay. Luana, any learnings?
Yeah, I think very similar to what these guys are saying. I mean, again, for us, it's quite a new approach, but you can definitely watch the data and what's happening on the site, and what are the content, what are the content pieces that people are downloading or not, and what are they sharing. And I think that's also share data is a very good indicator, because it's actually natural if somebody wants to share that content. I mean, I'm talking about B2B, which is not so much about entertainment and that factor about like what's what's cool and what drives emotion. It's more about what's helpful for me to drive my business. So if they're sharing that, it's because there's value. So more of that, would be what you do. And if it's really not getting picked up, then it probably means that it's not really hitting the mark. I also think that in terms of getting feedback and listening to customers, it's also very powerful to speak with your sales organization and salespeople. They're on the ground and customer service as well. They will know they'll be speaking with customers all the time. So it's another source to kind of get ideas for content and kind of incorporate that in the mix. But I couldn't point to any huge failure yet.
Okay.
If I was to point to one mistake, I don't know if it's a mistake. Two points. I think don't forget that the space itself is changing dramatically, right? So it used to be custom publishing, then it's digital publishing, and now incrementally, even the last 12 months, the people's desire to consume long-form content has plummeted dramatically, right? It's all about visual, it's all about video. People just don't have time or interest with the volume of content out there to consume content that was relevant not that long ago. One thing I think we got too hung up on early was really focusing on how many people are looking at our stuff and how many people are sharing it and getting it out there and things. And it's very easy to get caught up in trying to optimize and really maximize that engagement. Where I think we push through that to focus on lead gen and especially closing pipeline is really where it changes the focus, because you don't get distracted in the cloud of trying to make things popular. You're just trying to get a result for the right people.